Hello everybody and welcome to Adobe Live. My name is Flynn and I'm here with fantastic Ian Haigh. We would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are creating and streaming from today, and also pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We're here for part 2 of our 2-part series of animating text. We had a really great stream yesterday. If you missed some of it or we referenced some of it, you can always watch it on demand on YouTube or Behance. But I'll say hi to my wonderful guest. Hello Ian, how are you?
Hey Flynn, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yes, good, thank you. I really like doing these streams like one day after the other because we can get to hang out in a nice little package. It's very nice.
Yeah, exactly. And pick up right where we left off. Should we just jump straight in?
Yep, let's jump straight in. There's so much to get through. So I'll share your screen and off we go. Hello to everybody in chat.
Fantastic. So just to recap, what we were looking at yesterday was basically we put together all of these kind of various examples of text animation, and we just sort of run through them one at a time until we ran out of time. And so we kind of got up to number 2 yesterday. So I don't know if we'll get through all of these, but that's cool. Nice to have too many. This was one that we just thought we would kick off with today, and that was we were looking at the different ways that the range selectors or the various selectors interact with each other, and this was kind of a cool visual way. So if you've got this one here is the nice smooth shape, and this one here is the wiggle, so you're kind of getting this randomness. And then when you intersect them, and if I just flip that open so you can see what I mean, just make that bigger for a second. So we have here, this is animator 1, which has got that smooth shape that we saw before, and then get rid of that, it's confusing. And then this is the wiggly selector, and that's set to intersect with the one above it. So they stack so there's a range selector there, a wiggly selector there, that intersects. They're both set to characters. And then when I play that back, you can see, so the smooth curve, we've animated the offset on that one. The wiggle, doesn't need any animation, it's just wiggling the position. And then when you intersect those two curves together, then you get this effect, which is basically the wiggle being informed by the smooth curve up there. So you can see the wiggly dots starting at the left and making their way through. So it's a nice visual way to see what's happening.
That's super cool. I wasn't saying anything in there because I really like that. I think that's a nice little snippet tutorial we could throw somewhere too. Yeah, it looks great like this. I love seeing them sort of side by side, like next to each other, which is something that we were chatting about at the end of the stream. It's such a great visual way to understand how these text animators work and what you're doing in the background. Super cool.
100%. It helps a lot. I did actually add a couple more down here as well that were looking at the different kinds. So that one is a min type. It's a little bit more subtle. If I just bring that up, you might be able to see. So we have the min and then a subtract as well. And so you can see as the curve, they're the same curves as we looked at before, smooth and wiggle. And the min one, you can see that as that makes its way through, the dots which aren't going below the line then start to go below the line. Subtract, on the other hand, is pretty wild. It's basically taking those two curves and subtracting them from each other. So again, if I had just selected that and just applied it to my text, it might be difficult to understand exactly what's happening. But with this typing in loads of little dots, you get that kind of graphical way of seeing the different modes and how they interact.
That's so cool. I love it.
Yeah. Cool. So moving on, the next one that we were going to look at, I think this is really helpful. I call this auto fader, and I'll just start by making a brand new comp here. Call this number 5, and we'll get ourselves some new text here. So great. Call out the name of your favorite fruit.
Banana. Great. I want to see you spell banana from memory. It's always fun. The song BANANAS really helped me out, when that came out.
Yeah, it's I think loads of people sing. Who was it? It was what was her name?
Fergie?
No. BANANAS. I don't know.
Black Eyed Peas? I can't remember.
Oh, really?
I can't remember.
Anyway.
Someone help me out. Help us out, chat.
So if we start there, banana, Flynn's favorite fruit. And so what I want to do is right now, if you're used to like having your text fading on and off, you might do it like this, where I'm going to put a keyframe in here, put a keyframe in here, put a keyframe in here, and put a keyframe in here, and trim that layer. And now set the beginning and the end. These are opacity keyframes. And so we can sort of say, all right, we've done it with keyframes. And so when I play that back, it starts, fades in, and then fades out at the end, which is great. But if you've got a lot of these layers and you want to then change the duration of the layers for some reason, I have to sort of drag out the duration and then update the keyframes to make it work with the new duration. And so with the auto fader, what we can do is using a simple, I say simple, I think it's simple, and hopefully you will too soon, expression, which is a little bit of JavaScript, to control this for us. And that's using the, you could use the text animator property. You could just use the opacity property here, but since we're talking about text animators, we'll use those. So what I'm going to do is add a new text animator on here. So right click on the text with the text tool selected from up here. And I'll say animate text and choose opacity. That's added the default animator 1 and a range selector in there. And then all we want to do is we'll add now an expression selector. So that's one that we haven't seen yet. And the expression selector, at its most basic, it doesn't seem to do anything at all because of the default. It's got these, it auto-populates the expression field for you. So select a value times the text index divided by the text total. So we won't go into too much detail about what those mean, but you can use those variables with a bit of code to make some pretty amazing sort of effects. So in this instance, we will say we've got opacity down here twice. This one is associated with our text animator, and this is the one that is affecting the overall layer, if you like. So we'll just hide this one. I'm going to go Option Shift and click on it just to hide it. And then we'll come back to our diagram over here, which I prepared for the last time we did Adobe Live. And that is looking at, this is going to sort of help us understand, hopefully, what we're trying to do here with our expression. So if this is our layer and this is our timeline, 0 seconds, at 1 second, 2 seconds, and so on through to 6 seconds, we need to look at the endpoint of the layer, what time that is, and then we'll add the duration of the fade. In this instance, we're just saying 1 second. That's the duration of the fade there. And then looking at the out point of the layer, and we'll subtract 1 to find this point. So endpoint here, endpoint plus the duration, 1 is here. And then at the other end, this is when we're doing our fade out. So hopefully with that diagram, it'll make sense what we want to do here. So we're saying, we'll start by using the linear. So it was the expression selector on this layer. I'm going to type linear. And the first thing we want to do is, actually, before I jump into that, if you use this pop-up, you can see here all of the different kind of terms that you can use when writing your expression, which is a really handy little reference. Look at interpolation, that's where the linear one lives. And it's saying time, or the value t, which is the one that changes, and then we want to map it from one range of values, t min and t max, to value 1 and value 2. So that's kind of saying from here to here, or 1 to 2, I want to replace that, or I want to transform that into 0 to 100, which is what the expression selector expects. Right. So from 1 to 2, change that from 0 to 100. And then from 5 to 6, change that from 100 to 0. So no effect, 100%, 100%, no effect.
No effect. Okay.
Is that kind of making sense?
Yeah.
So good. That's good. So
I'm with you. The diagram helps, I think, because otherwise you can get really lost in the numbers. But yeah, that makes sense, and it ties back a little bit to kind of what we're talking about yesterday in the previous stream as well. Really, what you're doing is saying, this is where it starts, this is kind of a mid state, and then we want to go back to the start. And you're asking After Effects to do all of the hard work. And I like that way of thinking around it as well, rather than thinking, I have to figure all of this out. It's like, really, you're just trying to change states, you know, whether it's moving or fading or whatever it might be.
That's such a good way to think about it. And it's once you start to kind of break it down into little smaller chunks like that, it makes the whole thing much easier to understand. And so, that's such a good way to express it. You've sort of got a state, and then you're kind of saying, like, how much of that state do you want to be in? None, a lot, or somewhere in between.
Yeah.
So if we were saying that using our linear expression there, and that's the one that just lets us map a range of numbers to another range of numbers. The variable in this instance, or the component that changes, is time. So we'll start there, and then referring back to our diagram, we want to map the endpoint. We'll just do fading in for this one. Endpoint to endpoint plus 1. So we'll say time, ignore that error, endpoint to endpoint plus 1, and we're just putting commas in between these variables, and that just lets After Effects know that they're supposed to be separated, and we'll go from 0 to 100. So now nothing seems to happen. That's because the state that we want to affect is still set to 100%, so nothing is happening. If I now drag that back down to 0, hopefully what will happen is it goes backwards.
Went the other way around, which seems to be like a recurring theme, right? It sometimes does the opposite.
Sometimes. I think every time it does the opposite. And that's just
this is the motion design version of trying to plug in a USB.
It's exactly what it is. Yeah. You always, the first time it's wrong, the second time it's wrong, and then the third time, the first time was right.
Yeah. That's amazing. Also, shout out to Alessandra in chat, because watching something with the text, it's banana, and then we brought up Hollaback Girl, which is the song Banana.
That's it.
And she's also eating a banana muffin. So if we can keep the banana theme going, that would be great.
I'll be happy to. Let's make it yellow, just to really sort of, okay.
Let's just drive this into the ground.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Exactly. Flogging a dead banana. So we've got, so we're starting. I've got it exactly wrong. So this is now fading out at the beginning. Okay, that's cool. We can deal with that. So instead, I'll start at 100 and I'll finish at 0. So now that will fade in. So there we go. And that is not using any keyframes. That is basically just fading in like that. So at the beginning, it's 100, and then it gets to 0. Like I say, not 100% sure why I had to flip the numbers around, but it's just part of the fun. That's cool. It works. And then if you were going to fade it at the other end, you kind of probably the easiest way. You can do it all in one expression, and it would be adding these two numbers together. So actually, maybe we'll just try and do that. So we can just add these together. So because if you think about it, if you're starting at 100 and then going to 0, and then you're going to 0 and ending at 100, all you just need to do is in the middle, when they're both 0, you can just add them together, and it's just going to be a flat curve. So you're sort of getting like 100, 0, flat, 0, 100. So let's just try that out. And it's the high stakes drama of live streaming is that we will find out if it works in a second. So again, I'm just using a plus sign in there, linear. It's going to be mostly the same, but now we want it to start. Our first number, we're mapping from the out point, and remember, because we're looking at it from left to right, so endpoint plus 1, and now over here, the first one that we want is out point minus 1, and then out point. I hope that makes sense. So out point is the first one, then out point minus 1, and we'll map those from 0 to 100, and it will work miraculously the first time. Let's see. Play that back. Look at that. It actually did.
Nice.
So at the beginning, it fades in, and then at the end, it fades out. And that is, I just drag that to a different duration, and then I don't need to play around with keyframes at all. So it's kind of really versatile trick to have, because then I can just change that, make that a different layer. I could say, let's make that into, I'll call that mango, and make that Ian's favorite fruit. And now we can see that those, even though they're very different durations, I just have to change the duration of the layer by dragging it, and the fading in and fading out will work no matter what length they are.
Right.
And so it's a very versatile kind of, it can save a lot of time if you're dealing with a lot of different layers. And of course, it doesn't have to be fading or fading out. You could have the type flying in from the edge of the screen. So if we change that, instead of, well, I'm not going to spend too long on this, but if I change that, so the expression selector, all it's doing is really ramping that number from 0 to 100, and then from 100 to 0. 100 to 0, and then 0 to 100. So if I changed, instead of opacity here, or I could add a new property that needs to be affected as well. So I could add in, let's add scale, go in here, and then play with the scale, something like that. Maybe let's do it by word instead.
It's shrinking like a aging banana.
Yeah. You know what? Okay, I don't want to get too bogged down into it, but you can sort of see now it will scale up by character and scale down by character just by adding that additional property.
Right.
Now, importantly, if you decided this was a very cool text animator that you'd like to save rather than copying and pasting all the time, I think this is one of the best things about After Effects, is being able to reuse bits and pieces when you've done something cool. If you come in here and sort of look at your text animator, the first thing I would do is give it a name. So I'm just going to click on that, hit return, and call it Cool Banana Animator.
Cool bananas.
Yep. And then you could also think about, let's see, so Cool Banana Animator, one thing that we did do, which is kind of a bad practice, is we hard coded the duration into the expression. So the clever thing to do would be to go to the effect menu, go to expression controls, add a slider control, and then I could put my duration up here, refer to it, I'll call it, I'll just do it very quickly, drag up to that with using the little croissant or pick whip. We'll give it a name, var d, the duration equals that. And then instead of 1, we'll use d. And now, right now it's fading in and out over 1 second. So if I change that to 2 seconds, well, let's make it like really short, 0.2 of a second. Now it fades it and fades out very quickly indeed. Or I could make it 2 seconds, and then it will. And then, of course, if you were doing it like your client says, I love your Cool Banana text animator, however, everything is going up and it's fading in and out like way too slowly, then you only have to change it in one place to change it everywhere, depending on how you set it up. But now, to save that as a preset, just flip open that. You just want to save the Cool Banana Animator, so select that just by clicking on it, and then we'll save the slider control as well. And to be sensible, we'll call that give that a name as well, banana duration. So once I select both of those, and then go to the animation menu, save animation preset, Cool Banana Animator, and choose somewhere that you are going to be able to find it again on your disk. You can put it into the existing presets folder, save that there.
So if you put it in the existing presets folder, does that mean that within After Effects it'll exist in?
Yes, I believe that's exactly what it means. So when you go up here, look at that. it worked. So
that's pretty cool.
under Cool Banana Animator, it'll just show up here under user presets. So I just save it into the default folder. I've got my own, because I work on After Effects over more than one machine, I usually save them into Dropbox, and so that they're available from every machine.
Right.
But if you're only working on one machine, you want to save them into that default folder for user presets, then it'll show up here under a palette, which really doesn't get more convenient. And then if I was into, like, say, make a completely new composition, call that banana thing, put in my text in here, and then I just drop Cool Banana Animator onto that and trim the layer, and you can see, there we go. You've got your reusable, once it renders, it's probably taking too long. I need to speed up the transition. But it brought in the text animator with the name, so Cool Banana Animator. It brought in the effect that we selected as well, banana duration. And then you just have to drag and drop it. And so if you spend a little bit of time saving these things as presets, then you can build up a library of useful things. And it doesn't have to just be, it doesn't have to be text animated. It could be just like cool animation curves, or getting things off the screen or on the screen or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. Question about Dropbox, like saving something like that to a Dropbox folder that you reference. Does it take much? Is it just kind of basic data, or is it, like, I guess, what's the size of that? I'm just wondering about efficiency pulling something like that from like an online resource. Like, can you just leave it all online, or are they actually downloaded to both computers? We're getting pretty nerdy here, but I'm always interested in workflow stuff.
I would hope you were getting pretty nerdy. That's what I think. If you have a look here, so if I go to the Cool Banana Animator we just made and select Reveal in Finder, you can see it's pretty negligible, like file size wise. It's
45 kilobytes. Okay, so it's just 42 data in there somewhere, right? Like, it's pretty very small. Yeah,
pretty much. And it's like, these are some of this is my sort of like presets that I've saved, and generally speaking, I mean, none of them get to just over 100K or something like that. So they're pretty lightweight. And I thoroughly recommend it. It's just so nice to have a library where you can just start chucking things on and build up complexity like that, build up your animations. It works really well. And just to recap as well, so when you are saving that preset, it saves, if you click out on the top like that, then it will save everything underneath it. So in this instance, everything under here. Similarly with effects, so if I had more than one effect on here, for example, if I just chuck on, let's see, put on something else, so select that, and I'll put on, like, I don't know, fast box blur, crank that up a little bit. There we go, so blue radius. Okay, so if I wanted to save the preset, but there was already a blur effect on the type, then you would just effectively, okay, so select the Cool Banana Animator. That's definitely a thing we want to do. And then don't select effects, because that will select everything underneath it, including the fast box blur. We'll just do banana duration. And then when I go to animation, save animation preset, only these two things will be part of that preset, so that then when you apply it in the future, it will only add those, and it won't add the fast box blur as well. That's
awesome.
So we've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole there, but that's good. So that was the auto fader, making your text automatically come in and out with an expression, which I think is a pretty helpful one. This one, fade in by word, and this one actually, it's pretty similar. The cool thing about it is that you just have to flick one switch, and then you can see that they come in with a random order. So they come in just like bit by bit. So let's start that one up. I'll call this word random.
Awesome. And by the way, guys, if you have any questions about what we're doing as well, on top of my questions, feel free to throw them in. Anything around what we're doing.
Good. I just keep on grabbing little bits of things that you
throw us some questions. Talking a little bit too colloquially today.
Yeah. So in this instance, we'll run through this one. I don't think this one is too tricky. So we'll just start by making new text animator, again with the text tool selected, right click, and we'll animate the opacity. And then coming back to our text animator types, ramp up and ramp down, we want one of those. I think those give you the nice smooth animation and easing. So we'll choose here based on, we want to animate the words. Opacity will be at 0, and then we'll use a ramp up. And you can see it's already kind of actually used ramp down. So it starts it starts fully selected and then it ends unselected, if you like. And then it's simply a matter of animating the offset. So you can see there when I drag the offset from left to right. Oh no, should have been ramp up again. Starting offset minus 100 and then ending at 100. So we'll put in a keyframe here for offset there, keyframe here at 100. And then what you can, rather than, we talked about sort of layering text selectors and having them interact. The other thing you can do is, if you're not fussed about, you can completely ignore what you've already got and then start a new text animator on the same layer. So that's what we can do in this instance. So right now we have it fading in by word, which is great. Let's add some more words in here, which is great. Doesn't really make sense, but that's okay. And then under the advanced one here, there's one called randomize order. So if I play that back right now, it goes from left to right, which is great. If I turn on randomize order, it's the same thing, but it just chooses a random word to begin with. And you can play around here with the random seed. It's automatically set to 0, but you can type in any number. I'm quite partial to 42, and then it will change the order that they fade in.
But once you select it's the same each time, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you would have to change the text, if you change that, so if I just copy and pasted all of that, and so I'll bring that, make it into a paragraph, and then bring in the margin a little bit. So if you changed, it looks like that was the same as well. But yeah, you're right. If you change that random seed there, it will start predictably every single time you play it back. Right. So it's not like random, a different one every time, which would be very bad if you were trying to make a consistent animation and you're just about to do the final render and then suddenly everything changed. Would be frustrating. Would be crazy. Yeah. So in this instance, you could call this animator fade in random words. Kind of makes sense. We'll flip that up. And now, whereas before we were adding selectors here with the pop-up menu that's on the same level as the existing text animator, we go up to the animate menu. It's like adding a brand new, completely independent text animator. So I'll do opacity again, and you can see here, once I flip that open, I think it didn't seem to work. Try that again. Opacity, there we go. So that's the one that we had before, fade in random words. And here's a brand new animator. So alternatively, if you already have tweaked a whole lot of parameters that you like, just click on the one that you've already got and hit Command D or Control D on Windows. It'll make a duplicate of it. And you can rename it and tweak it. So in our instance, it's really just flipping it around. So rather than not fade out random words, we just want to move those keyframes over to the end of our layer. And then instead of ramp up, we'll just say ramp down. And theoretically, that should fade in random words, and then fade out. So
Nice.
super quick and easy way to do it. And then save that as a preset, and you are finished before lunchtime. So.
And I guess it's great as well. Like if you could do a little bit of a demo for a client, like say they've got you on to do X amount of videos, or you don't know how many there are, and they have brand colors, and maybe you're making lower thirds or intros or something for their slide deck or something for their website, whatever it might be, and you know that you're going to have to do 60 of these things, or an infinite amount, however long the contract is. You get it right at the start, and then you can kind of build a library for it, right? So that when they come back and say, hey, we really need this done by the end of business, end of day, we have 10 new names that we need these lower thirds done for, or all these new intro videos, everybody wants the same thing, can you get that to us? And you could very quickly just use one that's already approved, the pace is right, you've got it all ready to go, and you say, yeah, send us the text in an email or whatever, or in a CSV file, or they share a Word doc with you, whatever clients do these days, and you can just kind of pop it in and very quickly render these out, get them over to them, and off you go on your day. Go have lunch.
Totally. All while setting unreasonable expectations for the next time. But it's like it's like
you got to charge a rush fee for that, or you got to send it at midnight.
Exactly.
Delayed
but the cool
email
thing
send.
Is, it's like the more that it's like it encourages you to experiment and to build up complexity when you're doing it, because knowing that you can save it and reuse it means that it's not just you're pouring all of your time into a bottomless pit. You're actually building up, like you say, a library, when you can and particularly I think it's one of those things where, with a bit of organization, a bit of forethought, it's like my wife just bears at how organized I am on the computer versus in the real world. But I like categorize things, put them in folders and name them and so on. And I think it really helps me to kind of be more efficient, and to actually, that idea of having a library of reusable effects is just kind of, it saves so much time in the long run. So definitely worthwhile.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hey, we got a question from chat that I missed before. Alessandra asks, is there anything you've learned that at first it didn't make sense, but you kept practicing it and it made complete sense?
I think text animators are such a good example of that, because I think, when I first came to it, I was, and expressions for that matter, anything to do with the code and so on. I think when I started playing around, like a lot of people, it was just a lot of trial and error, and you find someone else's expression online and copy and paste that in, and it works, but you're like, I don't know how it works. But then you kind of start to break it down and play with variables and see what they do, like tweaking different parameters. And I think that would be a really great example of something where at first it can feel very daunting, but then with a bit of time and a bit of just, make yourself your favorite beverage and sit down and just spend an hour or two just playing and making those sorts of experiments, and you can actually make some headway. Yeah.
Cool. Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I'll move on. So that was like looking at fade by word. And I think we kind of managed to get that more or less. I had also added a little scale parameter to that as well, so they just all scale up, but that's more or less, we can understand that. This one's 3D space, and so I quite like this, and maybe I don't know how easy that is to see, but you can see that they're actually kind of coming, if I show you my phone, it's kind of like it goes like that.
Yeah, it's like on a cylinder or something.
Yeah,
it looks like it's kind of rolling in and then rolling out.
Yeah, that's right. So I can bring that up even larger over here. Yeah, that's how I should have been playing it. So when I render this out, you can see that it is actually rotating in 3-dimensional space. So it's not just going up and down, but it's actually, by the time, if you look over here, you can see that is on an angle rotated around the x-axis. So the x-axis is going parallel to the screen along the left and right, and then it's rotating around that axis.
Mm.
So let's see if we can build that, because some 3D type is always welcome. 3D type experiment.
Cool.
So let's get a phrase. What should we say? We had cool banana animator rolling around a cylinder. That sounded pretty good. All right, and I'll change that
Perfect.
to something
Does what it
else,
says
like,
on the tin.
yeah, exactly. I hope so. So let's start by, in this instance, we've sort of been doing a lot of position and opacity animation. So I'll right click on this and animate text. First thing we want to do is enable her character 3D. So that kind of just means up until this point, we've been animating things in 2 dimensions, and After Effects has like got a whole 3D space available to it. Once I turn that on, then it effectively says, I want you to treat this type like it exists in 3-dimensional space. So if I turn that on, and now when I add a text, in this instance rotation, it's added X, Y, and Z. So rather than before, where we could only sort of rotate around like, you know, a clock, now we can actually rotate this around. You can see this 3D axis up here, so it can rotate. That would be the conventional sort of rotation in 2 dimensions, but then we've also now got around, we can rotate around the Y-axis.
You're right.
Or even the X-axis. So you can sort of see that that's the one that we're going for, around the X-axis. You can drag it up there to see what's happening, or you can drag it down here in the timeline as well to sort of see what's going on.
Mm.
And so what we want to do is we'll get it rotating around the X-axis, but before we even start doing that, I want to set up, because you can layer the text animators and the selectors, it's helpful to sometimes have an initial position. And so put in a text animator that sits right at the top, and it doesn't animate anything. All it does is it kind of like offsets the text in some way to kind of get an initial state, if you like. So we'll start that, and hopefully it will become clear what I'm banging on about. So if I add a text animator up here, we'll call it position. I'm going to call this initial state, something like that. And now I can just drag that up and put it above the rotation text animator. So what I can do here with the position one selected, not even going to bother animating it, we've got X, Y, Z here. So if I move the Z position, so now I'm pushing it into the screen, if you like, you can see it getting further away. And then if I then change the X rotation, that's not doing what I expected. Hang on, maybe they need to be in the same. Oh, is it the, actually, sorry, it's not the position I want to, let me delete that. I'll add, it's the anchor point. So I want to, so the anchor point is where all the transformations take place. So the position and the anchor point are related, they're similar, but they're different. So if I push the anchor point back, and then I move the X rotation, now you can see it's actually rotating around a completely, rather than rotating around itself, it really feels like there's a cylinder there, if that makes sense.
It's
and
like
so it's actually, yeah. So that was actually quite a big value. So we'll make it a lot less. So that was 650. We'll make it minus 200. And now when I play around with that X rotation, you can see it's kind of getting more similar to what we were looking at in this demo example.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty cool starting place. And what we can do then is like, let's have it start at the top, and then we'll make its way down to the bottom. So we'll start up there, and then we're going to use, under our range selector, it's either ramp up or ramp down. I can't remember which, but we'll try one of those.
The old USB again.
yeah, the old USB again. I'll change that to words. And now if I animate the offset on there, oh, look at that. It kind of worked the first time. So starting at -100, put a keyframe in there, and then go to 2 seconds, and then change offset to 100% so that it's completely affected. And now I will play that back. And that more or less looks like what we want. You could also add in there some easing. So if you remember ease high and ease low, coming back to one of those which had, we've got so many comps here now, I'm going too quickly to name them properly after bragging about how I name everything properly. If you just use the ease high and the ease low, I'll open up one of these ones with the dots. You can see, yeah, this one will do. We'll change that into ramp up. Not a shape mode, I don't want that. So change that to ramp up. Now we can see the effect of ease high and ease low. So if I change that, you can see that it's putting that nice curve into our easing. So it could be like, say, 60 and 44. That looks quite beautiful. Come back to our 3D type experiment, and I'll plug those values in here, 60, 44. And that will, basically, before I do that, let's do a kind of before and after. So you can see now, make that bigger. It rolls around our cylinder really nicely, but it doesn't accelerate or decelerate nicely. So it sort of looks a bit unprofessional. If I was the client, I'd be like, yeah, but. So, however, when we put in here those numbers again, which is 60 and 44, to be that precise. Now, if I play that back, we ought to see a kind of more of a, when that plays back, is a smoother acceleration and deceleration taking place. And you could also, you can see, you can actually, right at the beginning there, there's a little bit of, you can see the type, which isn't ideal. There are a couple of things you could do there. You could just eyeball it. So by using the X rotation in here, zoom in a little bit. Going back to the X rotation property, I could hold down the command key or control on Windows. And by dragging that, I can get sort of very fine control over how I want it to look, and until it looks completely flat. And you can just see it. But that might be adequate. Like if that was on a background, then you probably wouldn't be able to see it. Or you could also add the opacity to one of these. So I could say add the opacity property, or just grab a whole new text selector as well. Duplicate that one. I'll take out the rotation properties. And
I like this way of building it, because if I was trying to do something kind of quickly and I was thinking, what tools do I have? I might mask it out. But then, of course, we're trying to build something. Well, it's good to build something in a way that you can reuse it, right? Like adding it to the library, if you got a mask there, you're going to have to redo the mask every time, or maybe it doesn't copy across, or, something like that. So it kind of takes away any of the value. But if you spend a little bit more time and know what you're doing here, then you can copy this and apply it to future projects, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, agreed. I think it really helps. So you can...
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, there's just one question. Are there any particular typefaces that are easier to animate than others? I think that's a great question.
Oh, that's a really interesting one. I think the ones that sometimes what you find is that monospace, depending on what you're trying to do, monospace fonts can give you some flexibility. If you were, like, one thing that comes up fairly often is if you've got, say, we'll just call this really quickly, numbers. And if I had in here, say, we'll just type in 0. So I could put in a super simple expression with going to option click on source text, and I'll just say linear time, starting at 0, finishing at 2. I want to count from 0 to 1000, for example. So now when I play that back, if I put the counter on there, so that will count back that'll count up to 1,000. Take 2 seconds to count up to 1,000. So what you can see here is that 0 is moving around. So you could try and, if you know what I mean. So it's like basically as the width of this digit changes, the 0 kind of moves around wiggles around all over the place. So you could, one thing to do would be to range that text instead of ranging it to the left, range it to the right. Now the 0 is in place, and that maybe that's adequate, maybe job done. But now you can see that the first digit moves left to right depending on the width of the text. So you can get around all of that. I think there might be plugins on AE scripts that help you do this as well. But if I chose like a completely monospace font, Andale Mono, for example, and I play that back, that didn't. I think maybe I have to turn off kerning as well. And now you can see that the first digit. Yeah, so I have to turn off kerning, auto kerning, and now the monospace. And so now you kind of get this more like, if you had a computer screen or like one of those cool old analog interfaces or flippy type at an airport or something like that. So that's just the first example that sort of comes to mind. Otherwise, I guess it would kind of depend on the type of animation that you're trying to do. If you're trying to have it, sometimes you want to have like a handwritten font reveal. And so I've had some, one of the things that I like to do with that one is you can just trace over it if you've got an iPad and a pencil, trace over that and then play back the strokes to reveal the type, which would work for a handwritten, like a brush written font. Alternatively, I guess if you were trying to do something with 3D, maybe you wouldn't want to have like the strokes or the very fine type. You might start to lose details, and so then perhaps it'll be something like you've got to choose a chunkier type or a type that's kind of got a bit more substance to it, so that you don't lose any of those little details. So I guess it depends on the type of animation that you're trying to do as to, and also if the client's got a particular font that you need to adhere to, then you must use that, I suppose.
Yeah. And I guess you could have some clashes as well, but I guess that's what working with a client could be. They're like, well, we want this, but they have this kind of script font or cursive font or something like that. And you're like, well, I mean, totally we could do it, but that animation style might not match the type of brand like you already have. So if you don't want to change the brand, maybe we need to rethink this animation style or something.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting because I think years ago, clients would have their brand guidelines and it would have, this is how our logo looks in RGB and CMYK, this is how it looks in print or on a billboard or on, but they didn't think about like, how does it move? Now people do think about it's beginning to sort of, you get motion guidelines as well, but it's still not everywhere, and it's still not kind of completely ubiquitous, but bigger agencies or bigger brand names would definitely have sort of motion guidelines and so on, because if you think about it, a lot of companies, their logo exists mainly on screens. You don't see them in print. So then if it's on a screen, then kind of by definition it can sort of move, and so then you can think about like, well, how those various kind of elements can come to life.
Cool.
Yeah,
lovely.
Cool. So that was, I think we pretty much succeeded with the cylinder one. So the one last thing was, it was just adding, I just duplicated that selector up there. And now even if I just turn that off for a second so that we can't see the opacity, even if you could see, like if we weren't starting at 90 degrees, if we were starting like there, so it was very visible. Once I turn on this one, so we'll call this hide the start, give it a sensible name that makes sense to us. When I turn that back on, it's completely invisible now. And then when I play that back, you can sort of see it. It'll actually sort of fade in before it drops. So that, and then you can also play around as well with the ease high and the ease low to just kind of make it like, you want the duration of the second text animator to be the same as the first one so that they match up. but by playing around with ease high and ease low, then you can sort of get the opacity fading in a way that kind of makes more sense. So, I mean, that looks pretty cool. I would save that to a preset. Rolling around a cylinder, done.
Very cool.
And then effectively, doing the same thing in reverse with the text animators that you already have to get it back off the screen would probably be the easiest way to finish that one off. But have we got time to do one more?
We have about 4 minutes.
About 4 minutes.
Yeah, about 4 minutes. So
okay,
it might be a bit tough, but it's up to you.
No worries. Well, this one, highlight words. I think there's a whole bunch of different ways of highlighting words. So I'll call it very quickly highlight words. And so if I had some text in here, like let's highlight some words, people. Hooray. And bring that on to the stage. We'll go back to a more kind of less monospace font, and then I'll make that into a paragraph so that I can bring in that margin. All right, so if that was where we're at, sort of our starting point, we've got typos in it, but we're not worried about that right now. And I'll just bring that down. So I can't handle it. Highlight, yeah. So if I wanted that to sort of like run through and change the color of the words, the easiest thing to do, I think, would just be to, again, right click on it. We'll go animate text. In this instance, we'll change the fill color and we'll just choose RGB. So that right now affects the entire, the whole thing. Change the fill color, we'll just make it white so that it stands out. And then with that range selector, so we've kind of been using ramp up and ramp down and smooth quite a bit. We want to come back to square in this instance because that's going to give us this kind of like what we want to achieve this effect is either on or off. Like it's either black or white. It's not somewhere in between.
Right.
So if I'll just change the, still a square, change the offset, put that into words, put a keyframe in there, and we'll just move the offset to 100. And now it's going through. It's not doing it. It's not doing it how I want though, because it's kind of like selecting.
It's like adding to each one after a time, but it's not going off.
Yeah. So what we want to do here is one thing that we haven't looked at units percentage. Instead, we'll change it to index. So right now we have the start at 0 and the end at 1. So that effectively just means one word at a time. So now it's only doing one word at a time. You see what I mean? But the other thing about it is because of the smoothness is set to 100, it's semi-fading in one word as the other one's fading out. So if I change that smoothness to 0, we get something more lines of what we want, which is it's just doing one word at a time, where it will just move from one to the next. And of course, even that's a cool kind of way to, if you wanted to just like break through or just emphasize some words, or it was a lyric video or something like that, if you just wanted to go through and highlight a whole bunch of different words. All right, I think that's about it for that one.
Awesome. Yeah, we're not going to have much more time. That's great. Let's look at all these text animators as well. Didn't get through all of them, but we got through, 2/3? That's pretty great. 2/3 in 2 streams. Got through 4 today. So
I'm
that's
pleased.
awesome.
I'm happy. That was good. That was great. So the only other ones were like curves, sort of gibberish one where it just picks random letters, and then more 3D. But we can save that for next time.
Well, thank you, Ian. Check out Ketchup Partners. Check out Ian on Instagram as well. Details at the below, and we'll be back next week with more Adobe Live. Thanks a lot, Ian.
Thanks a lot. See you later.
See ya.